Today is May 26th, 2006. I am Sarah Locker. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Linton, North Dakota. Can you state your full name, including your maiden name?
Eugenia Schumacher.
When and where were you born?
I was born 9 miles southeast of Linton on a farm. I was born at the house. The doctor came out and delivered me on July 24th, 1927.
You did have a doctor. Did your other brothers and sisters have a doctor come out?
As far as I know, they all did, yes.
Did a lot of people around you have doctors versus midwives?
I think in that time and in this area, I think there were doctors. Like Linton, most of the time had a doctor.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did anybody ever tell you any stories about your birth?
No.
Okay.
No.
Could you share the earliest memory you can recall?
Of my childhood? Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you, I never had a doll when I was little. And I always wanted a doll. So in the fall when they would saw up the wood for the fires, I'd go in the wood pile and find myself a nice little log and wrap it up in a blanket for a doll.
Wow. What was life like growing up on the plains?
I think it was a good experience. And I think farming is the best place to raise children. Sure, you do a lot of hard work, but I mean, in the long run, it pays off, I think. Because we had to, when I was 9 years old, I butchered the chicken. We lived next to church, about a block away from country church. And when it was like church feasts and stuff like that, there'd be about 20 priests that would come to our farm to have dinner because it was right there. And we'd have to cook, my mom and I would have to cook dinner for them. And you know, we used to have summer kitchens. We cook in the summer kitchen and took it over to the big house, which wasn't allowed to be used in the wintertime, or I mean the summertime, except for sleeping. Otherwise the floor was polished and you stay out. So, but anyway, I remember I was 9 years old and my folks got company and Ma said, we haven't got no meat or anything to eat. Why don't you go and butcher a chicken? We had springers, so I went and butchered some chicken. We had cream and chicken that night for company. So in those days, I think when people got company, mostly time they stayed to eat. Most of the time they did. That's what I remember from being a young person. I mean, I remember we always had lots of company for dinners or suppers and stuff like that. And then the names days too, they were a big celebration. We'd make roasters and roasters full of stuff, and everybody would eat before they went home at this one place.
Do you remember what other kinds of foods you would cook when people came over or for names days?
My mom's favorite dish, which nobody else fixed, was halupsi.
And what's that?
It's a rice dish. You take cabbage leaves and you cook them in a little bit of vinegar water. Put water in the kettle and a little vinegar in there and maybe a little bit of salt. And you cook them till the leaves are tender. And you cook the rice with raisins in it till it's done. And then you drain it and add sugar, cinnamon, and cream. And then you put this in the cabbage leaves and bake it.
And that would be something you just have for company?
Company, special times. We always make baked rice for just for us kids. But the halupsi was a special dish that was a rarity. There's very few families that make that. A lot of them make sweet rice, but not with cabbage leaves. I know a lot of people say pigs in a blanket, but to us that was pigs in a blanket, but it was halupsi called in German. So
Do you still make it now?
I do once in a while. Yeah, still do.
Special occasions.
Yeah, once in a while. My children love it. Most of them do. Some don't like sweet rice. They like salty rice, but most of the children like it.
Was there anything else you would make for these special occasions?
Like cream and chicken. That was the specialty, especially during the summer times. In the winter time, it was more ham and sausage.
And why did you have more ham and sausage during the winter time?
Because they butchered in the fall, and they had all this meat and stuff like that for the winter. So they used sausage, and they used that because they could store it better and stay frozen, where the chickens, I don't remember putting any chickens away for the winter time. It's only the ones that were in the chicken coop and laying eggs. But the other ones, I mean, they all got eaten or used up during the summer months. So,
it was left.
Yeah.
I see. What were winters like on the plains?
We went to school. It was about 2 miles from school, about 2 miles from us. And when the winter, when there was a lot of snow, most of the time we had to walk, but when there was a lot of snow, my dad would hitch up one horse on a stone bolt.
What's that?
It's something that they used. It's completely made with iron, a flat piece of iron that they used to move rocks out of the fields in those days. Now they use the farmhands, but in those days they used a stone bolt and moved the big rocks out. And us kids would sit on there. There was no place to hold or anything. You just held on to each other, and away we went to school in the snow.
It was really cold out.
It was really cold out. And all the years, the 8 years I went to school, I never missed a one day.
There's never a blizzard that you couldn't
I
make it to
couldn't.
school.
When the teacher was there, I was there. And most of the time, a lot of the teachers boarded at my folks' place because they had the bigger house, I guess, of what the reason was.
And what were the summers like?
Summers were very busy. I remember my sister and I, my mom usually had to go out the field and help, like during harvest, stack the hay, and then stack the stacks that they, not combine, they headered them, and she had to stack the stacks. So us girls were left at home to take care of the house, do the milking, and separating and whatever there had to be, and fix supper till the rest of them come home. And we milked 24 cows, my sister and I, by hand. And for some reason or another, they had the separator machine about a block away from the milk house. And we always had to carry all that milk down there and separate it, and then carry it back up to feed the calves. So it was hard work. No wonder I've got backaches now.
It's just you and your one sister that would
Did
milk
this,
the
yeah. The rest were out the field or something. I am the second oldest in the family, so I got in on a lot of work.
I suppose. And your mom helped out in the field a lot.
She did during summertime. She did, yes. But the wintertime, she didn't. Well, she helped milk. Everybody milked in those days by hand, so she helped milk, I'm sure. So, but in the summertime, she had to be out there stacking the hay and wheat.
let's talk about your family a little more. Let's start with your grandparents on your father's side. Did you ever know them?
Yes.
Can you tell me about them?
Grandpa Vetter, he was a short little man, heavy set. And the farm we lived on was their farm. My dad got the home place. And Grandma, she was kind of a big, stout lady, like most the German-Russian ladies were in those days. And I stayed with her a lot because she was always kind of sickly, and I was the older one, and I helped take care of her. So she was a nice lady. She was a Unser from birth. So she had was it a race car driver? Would have been her nephew, Linus Unser. He used to be a race car driver. I don't know if he's still living or not. But anyway, I think that's why I like to watch car races. My children laugh at me because I'm into car racing.
What was your grandfather's full name?
John Vetter.
Do you know when and where he was born? Or approximately?
It's in the book, but I don't know.
Okay. And what was your grandmother's first name?
Magdalena Unser, she was.
And then she married the Vetter.
Mm-hmm.
Did either of them ever tell you stories about coming over to the U.S. or living in Russia?
No. No, they didn't. They were so glad to be away from there, I think. They just shut it off. Completely try and forget it. No, the only one that talked about it later on in life was my grandpa Schlosser. He could talk Russian and German and English.
And this was your mother's father?
Father, yeah.
What kind of stories would he tell you?
He was, he worked on a farm over in Russia as a chore boy or whatever. Took care of the animals and stuff like that. And he didn't say anything bad about it, but I don't know. Everybody, their rest of our relatives left, so he left too with them and my grandma. They got married over there in Russia and came over.
Did your grandmother ever share, on your mom's side, did she ever share any stories?
No, she didn't. She had a large family, so she was busy taking care of her family.
And what were those grandparents like when you saw them?
They were very gentle. Even my grandma Unser, everybody thought she was kind of a gruff lady, but I always got along. She treated me very well, and I liked to go to her place. We'd probably go to Grandma and Grandpa's house once a year, special occasions or something, so we didn't see them very much. My grandpa Schlosser and his wife, they lived around Braddock area, and my grandpa Vetter and grandpa, they moved to Linton and left the farm for my dad. So those we got to see the Vetters much more than the Schlossers because they weren't that close. And in those days, Braddock was a long ways off.
Were your grandma and grandpa Vetter, were they religious?
Very religious, yes. Yeah. My grandma, she always had her rosary with her in her apron pocket.
Always carried it around.
Yeah, always had that with her.
And how many children did your grandma and grandpa Vetter have?
Let me see, they had, I'd have to figure them out. John, Frank, Joe, Lawrence, Mike, think they had 7 boys and 3 girls.
Wow.
And none of them stayed here except my Uncle John and my dad, Frank.
Where did the rest of them?
They got an education and moved away. Most of them were teachers. They went to Valley City College, and they're teaching. And one of my uncles moved to, he used to live with us for many years. After he was married, we had a big house, and they used one side of the house, and we used the other side of the house. And he moved to Napoleon area then after he moved away from us. So.
And how many children did your grandma and grandpa
Schlosser
have?
Oh, gee, I think 14.
Did they have any of those children before they came over?
Mm-mm.
They were all over here.
Yeah.
Since you have quite a few aunts and uncles, did you get to see any of the Schlosser ones since a lot of the Vetter ones moved away?
When I was younger, we didn't see them that much. But when we got older and could go out and drive and stuff like that, we would visit them, yes.
Can you tell me about other favorite foods you have from your mother?
The rice I explained to you, the halupsi, that was my favorite, I think, of all. Besides bamgusta. And those are little buns with garlic oil and stuff like that on there. And I think that is a Russian dish. And it comes from my Grandpa Schlosser's side of the family. My mom grew up with that because there's very few people that make them. I know when we have potlucks around here and some of the ladies know that I'm coming, you got to bring those little garlic buns, angusta. Nobody else makes them except me. I don't think anybody in town makes them except me. And that's a favorite of the family. We have it at Christmas and at Easter. And it's gotten to where the daughter-in-laws are making them too and stuff like that. But they're little buns, and you bake them, and then you make a oil with salad oil and water, salt, and a big chunk of garlic chopped up, and bring that to a boil and pour it over the buns.
That sounds really good.
It's very good if you like garlic.
Are there other recipes of hers that you still make, that you still enjoy?
My grandchildren, I have 10 of them, and I think all of my grandchildren, they enjoy what they call skinny noodles. They call skinny noodles. I call them Schnittenudler in German.
And what are those?
They're, you make a dough with eggs and water and flour, and then you make it real stiff and you roll it out very thin. The thinner you make it, the better they will be. And then you hang it around so they dry, either on a towel or someplace. Let them dry, and then you roll them up and you slice them. Cut them up in little pieces and stuff. And then you make a potato water, and you drop them in there and boil them till they're done. And now you take butter, fried butter. I don't know if you ever heard of fried butter, but we do. Fried butter, and you take some of these noodles, you cut them a little smaller than the other ones, and put them in this butter and fry them. And drain the noodles off then when they're done and pour this over them. And when the kids come home for Thanksgiving or Easter or whenever, Christmas, on Saturdays we usually have skinny noodles. The grandkids like them.
Now, when you were growing up, did any of the brothers help cook or help with any of the food?
No, I don't remember any of them cooking.
Did you have assigned seats at the dinner table?
Yeah, assigned seats. Everybody had their seat. And even my children, they all had their place. And we all ate together at the table. You didn't eat alone. I mean, everybody, when supper time, it was supper time. When it was dinner time, it was dinner time, and everybody ate. So.
And for your assigned seats, was it oldest to youngest, or?
No, the youngest usually sat by the mom.
Okay.
So.
Were you allowed to talk during dinner or during mealtime?
Not that much. No, we were too busy trying to get something to eat before it was all gone.
And resting from the hard work. Did you guys ever make homemade ice cream?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
We'd get, my dad had ice cellar, and in the wintertime he would go and make ice. He'd get some of the neighbors together and they'd make ice in the creek. We lived by the Beaver Creek, sort of, east of town. And they'd cut ice and bring it home and put it in that ice cellar for the summertime. Because we didn't have electric fridges or anything, we used that in the ice boxes. And that's what we used to make ice cream. And even like in the straw stacks, where the wind had blown in a lot of the snow, and somehow or another this got packed in there, and that stayed there like till maybe the end of June. We could still go and get some ice to make ice cream. But we didn't have no ice cream freezer. We used just a gallon pail and swished it back and forth in the ice till it was frozen. We had to take turns at that.
I suppose that took a long time.
I think it did. Thinking now, I assume it would have taken a long time, but at that time it probably didn't seem that long. It was just good to eat.
Would that be for?
That was
Sundays,
a specialty. A specialty, yeah. Or maybe somebody's birthday or something like that we had ice cream. Because most of the time the milk and the cream were saved to use for something else, like on the table, or cream was used to sell and buy the groceries with. So you didn't use too much cream. And the eggs too. So you had to kind of watch it so you didn't use it too much. But we'd make our own candy too when my folks would be gone. We took sugar, put it in a frying pan, and we fried it till it got kind of golden brown, and then we'd shut it off and let it cool off, and it would get hard. It had hard candy. It's the same thing that they use for making red-eye. Only we used it for candy.
So did you learn about the sugar from your parents?
Yeah.
But you could only make it when they were gone?
Yeah, we'd always make something. We weren't supposed to. We'd always make candy or something, but my mom, she always would know it. Dad probably did too, but he never said anything. But Mom would always smell it when she'd come in the house. A different smell in the house.
Did you make anything besides the burnt sugar?
Yeah, the kids taught me into, my sisters and brothers taught me into making a cake one time. We were supposed to make a cake. I don't know why, but I mean, we must have been hungry or something. Anyway, I was going to whip up a cake, and I did. And I forgot to put the baking powder in, and it got like rubber. We couldn't eat it. So we went and buried it so Mom and Dad wouldn't find it.
You said that you did your own butchering and canning. Can you tell me about that process? When you would butcher, what you would do with the meat?
When I was a young girl, the only way we could preserve meat was to put in a salt brine. Water and salt. And you would make it real salty so it wouldn't freeze and stuff like that. And they had smokehouses too in those days. They would smoke the hams and stuff and the sausage, and they smoked it so hard that it, I think it kind of cured it from the heat, that it was almost cooked. I remember they had hams in smokehouses till spring sometimes, hanging in the smokehouse.
And it would still be just
good.
as good.
So you take the outside layer off, and the inside was very good yet.
What all would your mom can?
I don't remember my mom canning at all.
It was just the meat that you would preserve.
Yeah. They had potatoes, but I don't remember her canning anything, like from the garden or anything. And I don't remember the garden. The only garden I remember was the flower garden that I had. But I know we had a garden, but and we didn't have a well close to the house. We had to carry all the water about 2 blocks. All the water we used. We had to carry about 2 blocks. Our well was about 2 blocks away because they couldn't find water in the yard.
So how many trips would you have to take to get water?
Oh man, we used cream cans sometimes in the wintertime. We'd use cream cans and that stone bolt to bring it up for wash day and stuff like that.
So you could fit more in and not make as many trips.
Yeah.
What was a typical meal that you would have just on a typical day?
Okay, meat and potatoes or noodles. Sundays we always had soup, chicken noodle soup. Yeah, that was Sunday meal. But I don't remember having dessert or anything with it.
Did your family make their own root beer or wine or liquor?
Yes, even liquor. My dad had a still. He was very good at it. How to make 190. He always had that on hand.
And how would he make it?
How to make it. They had it from. It had to ferment. It had to ferment for a long time. This was a big process to make 190. And they started in the fall when they had the grain, and then it was maybe January when they would run it through these little pipes and stuff and steam it, and the pure alcohol would come out. I remember watching it. My dad had it in the kitchen when he did the last steps. He had it in the kitchen. I don't remember how he heated it. He must have had a little heater there or something.
And how often would people drink alcohol when you were growing up?
Not just when he had parties, except for my dad. He always had to have a shot in the morning.
Just one?
Just one.
And you wouldn't
My
have one when you
dad,
got home?
my dad was not a drinker, but he said that would get him going. One red eye in the morning.
Did anybody in the neighborhood, in the community, ever get in trouble for making alcohol during Prohibition?
Not in the neighborhood that I grew up in, but I think there were some west of town or stuff like that where our farm is now that got into trouble.
Did you ever make your own wine or beer?
Yeah, my family made the beer, the root beer, and that was the best root beer. It had such a good flavor, but most of the time it was, you saved it and saved it and saved it until it was too, I don't know how to put that. It had too much gas bottled up into the bottle. By the time, when you open up the cover, shoo, it was just like champagne. You lost half of it.
Do you remember how that was made? How the root beer was made?
Yes, water, and then they had this root beer flavoring they put in there, and yeast.
That was it.
Yeah, and they leave it set warm, a certain temperature, and the yeast, they would just leave it on top to float around. And that fermented it or something like that. And then when it got to a certain stage, they could tell that it was ready to put in the bottles. But if they put it in too early, then the gas in there would still, sometimes the bottles would blow up on them.
Did that happen occasionally?
I remember it happened, but I don't know if it was occasionally, but I remember it happened.
Is there anything else about cooking food that you would like to share?
Oh, some of my favorites, old favorites. I told you about the rice dressing, like for Christmas. I always have to make the rice dressing and the bread dressing because a lot of the grandchildren and I myself prefer the rice dressing. And it was made with, you take rice and raisins and wash them, and then you boil them in salt water, boil it in, and then drain it, and then you'd fry some onions and pour it over it. I always use Crisco because it seems like it turns out better. And then you'd use it for a stuffing. And the raisins in there is what makes the different flavor in it. I know some of my children, they didn't like raisins. And when they got married and went their own way, they didn't put the raisins in. It didn't taste right. So. And then there was the cream noodles. They're a noodle dough, and you roll it out in a flat piece. And you make some hot water with a little grease in it. And you take whipped cream and spread it over this dough that you spread out, and sugar and cinnamon. Now these will be sweet noodles. They smell like cinnamon rolls or something like that. But then you cut them in little squares and drop them in this water and boil it till they start frying. It's very good.
Sounds like a tasty dessert.
Yeah, it's not a dessert. It's a noodle.
Okay.
It's called, we call it cream noodles. And then placenta. That's made with pumpkin. And the skinny noodles. We already went through that one.
Yeah, you also mentioned earlier the choke cherry jelly.
Choke cherry jelly, I would say I am a professional at choke cherry jelly. I've made it so many years. I remember when I was a girl, I used to have to cook it at home, and we had these kerosene stoves, and you couldn't adjust them very well. And sometimes it would run over. They'd have a big wash boiler, one of those big boilers, cover boilers, full of jelly, or at least half full of jelly, and you'd have to stir it and watch it so it wouldn't run over. Because when it gets a certain stage, it'll kind of come up, create so many bubble ups that it'll come up and run over. And a couple of times it ran over on me. Oh, that was a mess. So I learned not to shut it down when it gets a little thicker. But I make the choke cherry jelly without any shirt gel or anything like that in it. I know people around here, they come and buy the choke cherry jelly from me. They say it's the best. So I don't use it that much. The only time I use it when I make schmutzkichler.
What's that?
It's fried dough.
Okay.
In German you call it schmutzkichler. Some people call it elephant ears, but we always, that I like, or I like it on pancakes, but I don't use it on toast or anything. But I still make it, and I do take it to the care center, and these older people, they really appreciate having choke cherry jelly. I took a jar down there yesterday, and they sometimes make bread in there, one of those bread bakers, and serve it for their lunch. I do scripture down there once a week, and then I bring them choke cherry jelly for on their bread, and they always grab for the choke cherry jelly.
Now, if you made as a girl this big, huge batch of the choke cherry jelly, how would you store it? What would you do with it?
We had cellars, and we'd seal it in jars and save it. That's the only thing I remember having canned was choke cherry jelly, because that you'd go and you'd pick choke cherries, like say Sunday afternoons when it wasn't called work. You weren't supposed to work, but that wasn't called work. You went to the creek and picked choke cherries. You brought them home by the 10-gallon cans, 10-gallon, those cream cans. Brought them home in 10 gallons of choke cherries, and then Mom would cook them and strain them out, rub them out, and cook the jelly. All I use is sugar and water. Well, not water, the water that the cherries were boiled in. That's what I use, and sugar. And then I cook it till it gets a certain stage. I can see the way the bubbles look if it's done.
Kind of like your mom on cooking bread?
Yeah.
Just know by looking?
No, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or how much to put in the stove to get it right.
Mm-hmm. So is this jelly a little more liquidy as opposed to a lot of jellies today that set all the way?
I can give you a jar. It's nice and firm.
It does set.
Yeah, it sets, yeah.
Interesting. I always heard of putting gelatin or something into this.
There's the stem from the choke cherry should be with the choke cherry, because that's what creates the gelatin. And a lot of people don't. They screen them out when they wash them. They wash the choke cherries, but they should leave them in there for that reason, because it's some kind of a deal in there that settles the jelly. Make it thick.
From your mom.
Yeah. An experience.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about grade school a little bit. Where did you go to school?
Wells District. It was east of town. Country school.
How did you like the teachers that you had? Was there one that you preferred more than another?
Like I said, most of the teachers boarded at our house, because we always had this extra room. And a lot of my aunts taught there, but they were mean. They were very stern with us because we were their relative and they didn't want to favor us and stuff like that. But my favorite teacher was Levi Kruchwich. He was a man, and the family lived there with us. He had a son, and his wife was with him. And he would play the guitar for us at school. He played the guitar, and we'd sing. And he was a nice man. He was gentle.
Did you have a lot of male teachers?
No.
Just him?
No, that's the only one I remember, a male teacher. The other ones were all women, usually older ones.
Now you grew up obviously speaking German.
Yes.
What was it like trying to learn English in school?
Oh, my God. We had to learn English. If we got caught talking German on the playground, we got punished.
What was the punishment?
You had to stay in for recess. Couldn't go out for recess or something like that. Or stay after school and things. But that was very hard for us, not knowing how to speak the English language when you started school, because you had to start from scratch. I mean, you didn't know how to read or anything. I mean, how could you? And today, it irritates me that we teach the Spanish language in schools to the Spaniards. We had to learn how to talk English and go away from our German. Why don't they learn our language? If they want to be Americans, they should learn our language. That's what we were told.
That was why they made you learn English?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how long it was before you could really speak English? Did it take a couple of years?
That helped us because we had these teachers staying with us. It kind of helped us because they were English. They talked English and talked English to us. So that kind of helped us more than any of the other families, I think.
That's true. What was your favorite memory about going to school?
I liked going to school. And I was the only one in my class all 8 years. I didn't have nobody in my class. And the teachers in those days, they taught all the classes. Can you believe that? Man, I know because I taught school here. And my favorite thing was when they would bring food there and have it cooked there, and we'd get to eat it. It was good stuff. I don't remember just exactly, but I remember I liked to eat that, and I wasn't a big eater at home. I always got scolding for not eating enough, but at school I liked what they had.
What subjects did you like in school?
Spelling. Math was my worst one. I liked agriculture. I don't know, I think they call it science now.
So at home, would the teachers that boarded with you usually help you with homework?
They'd help us with homework sometimes, yeah. They got to be like the family, part of the family by the time the end of the year got around. Most of them did anyway.
Do they have their own chores to do too?
No. They probably helped with the dishes maybe, but other than that they didn't, because they paid board and room.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Being they boarded with you, did you read more at home then? Did you read books too that they had?
No, I don't remember reading at home. Mm-mm. But I'm sure we did. I'm sure we had homework, but I don't remember particularly doing much reading.
What would you do at recess? What games would you play?
Hide and go seek, kick the can, and winter time we had that fox and goose deal going. And I think sometimes we did play baseball.
Now for baseball, did you use a bat like they use today?
No, it was more or less a piece of wood from a tree. Something like.
And what about for the ball and for the gloves?
Ball, we didn't have no gloves, just your mittens. And a ball, I don't know, they must have bought them or something. I'm sure the school had them because you weren't allowed to. You always had to bring them in and put them in a certain corner where they were supposed to be, and so I think the government furnished the ball.
And if you didn't have food cooked at school, would you bring your own lunch?
Mm-hmm.
What would you bring?
Bread. I don't ever. Well, I wasn't much of a meat eater, so I didn't miss meat. So I'm sure they had liver sausage or head cheese or something in there. But fruit was a rarity, except for apples in the wintertime. My dad would buy a box of apples, and we'd get to take them along to school.
Did you ever celebrate any holidays at school? Have any school parties?
Only Christmas plays I remember, but other than that I don't remember any parties or anything.
Can you explain the Christmas play that you would put on?
It was Jesus and Mary, Joseph, and two would be angels and stuff like that, but it wasn't a big deal like they do nowadays. But other than that, I don't think we had any. We had some plays sometimes that the older ones would put on, older grades would put on for the younger ones and stuff.
Did you enjoy those?
Yes, I did. Some of them I remember as a child that I thought it was good. But I don't know what it was all about anymore, but I remember thinking that was good.
Were you encouraged to go to high school?
Yeah, I was encouraged to go to high school. My parents wanted me to go, but then when my mom got sick, then I stayed home after freshman year.
Did you ever finish those other 3 years of high school?
No, never went back. The only time I ever went back was when Martin was in the deacon program. We had to take a test, write a test, and they judged us as college level when we got done with it.
What was this a test for?
In the deacon program.
Oh, when you became a deacon in the Catholic Church?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was education important to your parents?
Yes, it was. Because my dad's sisters and brothers all went, a lot of them, half of them went to college and became teachers.
The house that you guys grew up in, can you describe it? How many rooms it had, what each of the rooms were?
The kitchen was very big. I would say 30 feet long and about 20 wide. That was our kitchen area. And then we had a room, two sides to the house, left and a right, and they both had big rooms, maybe 15 by 15, if not bigger. And that was what they called the dining room and living room together. Because in those days they didn't have dining rooms separate. And then they had bedrooms. We had 2 bedrooms downstairs and about 3 upstairs.
So did you and your brothers and sisters have to share rooms very often? With that many?
No. No, we didn't. The girls and I were in one room, and the boys had the other rooms, because there were more boys.
And what furniture did you have in your house?
In the living room, we had a fancy table with fancy teapots and stuff like that on there. And in the kitchen, it was just the sewing machine, the kitchen table and chairs, and the cook stove, and that was about it. Maybe a cradle sitting somewheres. And that's about it. And they had to heat them, so they had a heater stove in there too, besides the cook stove. And so all that stuff took a lot of room. By the time you had your wood, your firing wood and everything in there and stuff, wasn't too much room for anything else, any fancy stuff. Like I said, they had these big closets where you hung your clothes in, and those were mostly in what you call the living room. Bedrooms weren't big enough to have them in, so they had them in the living room, plus the table and then the heater for the rooms. We didn't have a heater up in where we slept. We just had these little vents on the floor that brought the heat up from below.
Did it do a
Get pretty
job?
cold. Did pretty cold sometimes.
So did you girls then sleep in the same bed to stay
Yeah,
warm?
we did. Yeah, and we had those. My folks always had geese, and we had feather chicks to cover up warm.
And that stayed pretty warm then.
Pretty warm under there.
Now you had a fancy table in the living room and then another table in the kitchen. Which one would you eat at usually?
Kitchen. The one in the living room was just used maybe when you get company to play cards on, but they just had fancy things sitting on there, candles and whatnot.
So would you eat there if it was a holiday or if you had company? Would you eat in that room?
No, it would always be eaten in the kitchen. Because the kitchen table usually was big.
You could fit everybody.
Yeah, fit a lot of people.
Now you didn't mention any bathrooms in the house. What would you do for your bathroom?
We had a porta potty. And you took it along when you went to bed, just in case you had to go. And the last thing you did before you went to bed, you went out to the outhouse and did your thing. And then you had a little potty to take along with a cover on there in case somebody needed it.
And what about baths? How often would you have them? What were they like?
Gosh, I know we used the wash tub. That galvanized, like a big round galvanized wash tub to take baths in and stuff. But how often, I don't. I'm sure maybe once a week, I would say.
And the last person have the same water as the first
They all
person?
used the same water. It just kept adding a little more hot water so it wouldn't get cold.
So the last person wouldn't have the freezing cold one.
Yeah.
How about brushing your teeth?
You didn't brush your teeth in those days. Nobody brushed teeth.
Well, Did anybody ever go visit a dentist?
I don't remember any of them ever going to the dentist. My dad would pull their teeth if they, as long as they were little. I mean, put a string around it and on a doorknob and close the door or whatever. Here was the tooth.
Did you ever go visit a doctor?
I don't remember until I was maybe 16 or so going to a doctor. Otherwise, I never went to the doctor.
Did anybody in your family ever have to go for an emergency?
No.
Accidents like that?
No. No.
Did you?
We had green drops.
That
was something you got for stomach aches or headaches or stuff like that. They don't make them anymore, but my sister would never take them, so she was always the sickest. She didn't like them.
Did you have any other homemade remedies to take care of cuts or headaches or?
Vicks, I guess. They rubbed you up with Vicks when you had a cold. Mentholatum. Well, that was about it.
Did you go to town very often?
4th of July, maybe. If the hay was done.
Why would you go on the 4th of July to the town and have a celebration?
They had a celebration, yeah.
What was that like?
It was big. I mean, they had, at least maybe I was just a child and thought it was big, but to this day, I still think it is bigger than they have now. Because, I don't know, it seemed like a lot of people took part in it. Because that was their big celebration, their freedom. Coming from a different country, they appreciated it more, I think, than we do now.
So it was celebrating not only the independence of the U.S.,
Yeah.
but also their personal independence.
Yeah. A lot of times you'd get together, you'd arrange it so you'd get together in town someplace and with the neighbors or somebody and have a picnic together.
Would there be any events going on in the town? Any games being played in the town? Any parades?
No. The parade was mostly cars and horses and stuff and little wagons and things like that.
Did you have fireworks or anything for the 4th
No.
of July?
It had firecrackers, I remember, but just those little tiny ones. They were maybe an inch long.
How large was the town? And actually, which town was it?
Sometimes we'd go to Strasbourg, sometimes we'd go to Linton. I don't think they all celebrated in those days. They'd take turns. One year this town would do it, and next year that town. So, and when we'd come to Linton here, it would be mostly down the park, Seaman Park. That's where they'd have the celebration.
Did you notice if there was a difference between those who lived in town and those who lived in the country?
A little bit. They kind of looked down on you because you were a farmer and maybe not dressed quite as neat and fancy as the city guys did.
Were there any other ethnic groups living in the towns, any Norwegians or?
Not around here. Well, Strasbourg there was the Hollanders. But they, I don't know, they mixed in pretty good.
There wasn't a big difference between them?
Mm-hmm.
For religion, how often did your family attend church?
I would say just on weekends, Sundays, because we didn't have a resident priest there. The priest had to come from the creek area to have Mass. That's where he lived. So we only got him on weekends or holy days. But holy days were holy days in those days. They were like a Sunday.
And you were Catholic growing up?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any activities that you attended that were at church? Did your church have a Names Day celebration?
No. It was Sacred Heart, that's in June. But that's when all those priests would come and eat at our house. But I don't remember. They would all come and have Mass and stuff like that, and then they would come down and eat at my folks' place.
When you made your first communion, did you make it in German or English?
I made it in German.
How about your confirmation?
I think I was confirmed at the same time. To this day, I can still see her face and the foam coming out of her mouth.
Wow.
Gross.
Yeah.
So I don't think they had him involved.
Doesn't sound like it.
No.
Did anybody ever discuss death?
No. But we, as kids, we'd always go up the cemetery and run around and read the names and stuff like that in the daytime. And then when the shadows came, we stayed clear. As the sun would create shadows up there, we'd see all kinds of shadows in the cemetery.
Can you describe what a funeral was like when you were a child? What they did? Did they have a wake?
Yeah, and they brought the bodies into the houses. Kept the bodies in the house. But we never had anybody in our house. I don't remember anybody dying that we had, like a sister or brother or anything, that we had him in the house. The only one I remember is my grandpa, Vetter, being in the house.
Are there any Lutherans or other religions near you, around you?
Not when I grew up. No, there wasn't.
You were all Catholic.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. All right. Do you recall a memory from your childhood that was particularly frightening or adventurous?
Frightening, yes.
What was that?
On that stone bolt. Going over the hills and bumps and stuff like that and trying not to fall off. That was scary. When our dad would take us to school.
Because you had nothing to hang on to?
We had nothing to hang on to except each other. And I was sure everybody would roll off at the same time.
Do you have any other memories from your childhood that you would like to share?
I don't remember too much about my childhood, except for the sewing. My mom and dad would leave and I would go and find these old bags that they brought the mash in, wash them up, and I would use the sewing machine. Because when Mom was around, I wouldn't get to use it because she was afraid I would mess it up. So I did it while she was gone, and that's when I learned how to sew, was when I was real young.
All by yourself, watching her and then
watching
trying
her.
it yourself?
Yes. My mom was very talented, and I picked it up from her. We cut our own patterns, dress patterns and stuff like that. We take a dress that fit and then you make a different style and stuff and cut a pattern for it, and it turned out pretty good. Like I did my both two daughters' wedding dresses, Marianne and Valencia's wedding dresses, their veils. I did all of their prom dresses when they went to the prom. And I think some of them are still out the farm.
Wow. Why do you think it's important to share your life stories, to share these memories?
I have been told by my grandchildren to write these things down so they have something to remember by.
That's a neat thing, is you get the DVD to share with them. That's neat that your grandkids are interested too.
Yes, they are.
They ask you, do they sit down often and say, Grandma, tell me about when you were a kid?
Yeah, and I have 3 grandsons that are in the Guards, and they were some of the first ones that got deployed. And they were very interested in Martin's service life after they knew what they had to go with.
Yeah.
But they were lucky they didn't have to go overseas. 2 of them were stationed in Minot Air Base. After the Air Base guys had left, they had to guard the base there. And the other one was in Fargo, Happy Hooligans. He guarded there.
Good old Happy Hooligans.
But they had to put their lives on hold. They were all going to college and put their lives on hold for a year. But they got it done. Tim, the oldest grandson, he got his doctorate degree in physical therapy in April 29th, when out of Mary College, the first 16 out of Mary, or 29 was it? Out of Mary College had graduated in physical therapy in that field.
Wow.
Got his doctor's degree. So now he's got a job, and his wife, he met her when he was in physical therapy going to school. She does similar things that he does. They're going to Pierre and work for the schools down there in physical therapy. I'm sure they'll be working a lot with Native American children there. And Jim did his internship at Jamestown Crippled Children's Home, and he loved to work with the children. So I think he'll like it.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Are there any other insights or memories that you would like to share?
So far, all the grandchildren that got married, the other ones made a special effort to come home for the weddings.
Oh, that's good.
It's good.
Got the whole family together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.